Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Spartan Forge. On today's episode, I am joined by Brett, Joy, and John Lewis of the Just Hunt Club. We met up in the big woods of Pennsylvania it was actually like late summer, to talk about Brett and John's experience learning to hunt Pennsylvania compared to some of the other northeastern states. We discussed hunting creek bottoms, a 3-year strategy to learn a new area, sitting in the same tree versus bouncing around, and learning from tracking deer, and much more. The episode is brought to you by Spartan Forge, and the Spartan Forge app utilizes years of military background and machine learning to pull from millions of data points to accurately predict deer movement, including GPS data, 30 years of weather, academic, and state research. The new app includes GPS mapping with incredible aerial imagery, offline dependability, deer prediction, weather updates, journal entries, and much more. The beta app is released now to those of you that were lucky enough to get in at that lower cost that I'd been talking about on here. But they had met their goal in just a day and temporarily closed down the app just to these beta testers. So the purpose of beta testing is for the consumer to get the product at that lower price while providing feedback to work out the final bugs before it goes full scale. Once you can still sign up online, and when the app releases, you'll be able to get that. Using the code eastmeetswest, you'll save 25% off the Spartan Forge app at spartanforge.ai. Tethered is a company founded on the principles of educating the hunting community on saddle hunting while creating the most innovative, lightweight, safe products for saddle hunting. They have mobile hunting gear options for all types of hunters and continue to push the envelope. So if you want to learn more about tethered and saddle hunting, head over to tetherednation.com. Maven is building the highest quality optics at half of the price of their competitors through their direct-to-consumer business model. They want to create the best optics for the job, period. Their products are backed with a lifetime, no-fault warranty and an incredible customer experience. I'm currently using the B3 8x30 binos in all my whitetail hunts. They're super lightweight, feel like they're not even there, and they do really well in low light for that small package. You can use the coupon code eastmeetswest-gift for a free gift with any full price optics order at mavenbuilt.com. GoWild is a free social community built by hunters for hunters. Join me on GoWild today to get $10 to spend on gear for just setting up your account. You'll keep unlocking GoWild rewards, and you can now see my gear setups underneath my profile. You can join at timetogowiled.com or just by going to your app store and looking up GoWild. You can use the code eastmeetswest to save 10% off of all of the hunting gear on the website. All right, so what's new? Well, this past weekend here, so that would have been the weekend of like October 16th, 17th. I got out on Sunday to do some scouting. Was doing some housework on Saturday during the rain there. It's kind of nice. I have to admit to be tagged out and choosing when I go out and spend time in the woods. But so anyways, I went out scouting, pulling some cameras that batteries had died, some of my cell cameras, and moving them around a little bit, putting some fresh batteries in, dropping more cameras for intel for next year. And the sign was still really slow. I didn't find much for scrapes, not much for rubs. But I know it was going to heat up, and it did actually Sunday evening. But anyways, when I was in there, I ended up jumping one of the bucks that I've been watching, a 4-year-old 10-point. I jumped him bedded in a really weird, kind of an odd spot. So the area that I was in, it's not like they're not giant mountains. It's some more hill type country big woods, and with some plateaus and long flat areas. And this buck was bedded on the middle of a flat area with some beach brush to his back. wind coming over his back, and he just saw me. By the time I got in front of him, I was like within 40 yards of him, and he jumped up and took off. But beautiful deer, super wide, kind of low tine, 10-point. He was an 8 last year that I'd actually nicknamed Iffy because he was iffy if I wanted to shoot him. But this year I would definitely shot him. But he's a beautiful deer. And so that was exciting to be able to see that. So I moved some cameras around, freshened up my own scrapes. But Sunday night, my cell cam started lighting up along with just about anyone else I know that that is running cameras or running cell cameras where they had that intel. That cold front blew in over the weekend. Sunday was just a really good day. Had some rain, even got some hail while I was out in the woods, and they were out freshening those scrapes up right after that rain, and even into Monday. Had some cold weather, and today, as I'm recording this Tuesday, I had 30 to 31 degrees in my house this morning and frost on the windshield. Just beautiful weather. So it's on the verge, starting to get good here. I had bought my New York license, so I got a deer and bear tag in New York that came in the mail. I'm going to head up there this weekend and do some scouting. I don't know if I'm just going to spend a day up there, if I'm going to spend 2 days yet. If I find some hot sign, I plan on hunting it, but I've never been to the area, so it's more so I'm going to scout it. Might even drop a couple cameras. If I have cell service, I'm going to bring up 2 cell cameras and see. But really, me getting this tag and hunting this, I'm going up just to kind of learn a new area, experience a new place, and I don't really have high goals or anything for hunting this. I'm going to shoot whatever buck if I have the opportunity that gets my heart pumping. That might be a small little basket rack buck. That might be a bigger one. I don't know until that time, but I'm not thinking too hard into it. I'm just going to go up and try to, I guess, what do they call it? Freelancing it. So I'm just going to go up and scout and find some hot sign and try to hunt it over the next few weekends and even into the beginning of November. And I just solidified my plans last night on what I'm going to do during the rut. So since I have a week of vacation now that I'm not using here in Pennsylvania. So after I'm going to be a part of the Spartan Forge Veterans Day weekend hunt in Pennsylvania. Going to be there for that. And then as soon as that ends, I'm heading to southern West Virginia to hunt with Josh Ilderton of the Untamed. Going to go down there and do some spot and stock whitetails and some of that coal mine country, and just some big rugged mountain hunting. Sounds like I'm going to do a little mixture of hunting from the ground, hunting from the tree, whatever. I'm going to try to learn a lot from Josh and hunt on my own and just see what can happen. But I'm going to be down there probably about 6 days of hunting, and I'm really excited about that. So that'll be like November the 14th. Or 14th to like the 20th or so. I'll be down there, so it should be pretty good. A lot of exciting things going on, and I also have restocked one of the new mountain buck, or not new. It's the timber cut mountain buck hat that had been sold out for a while. I finally got that back in stock on the website. So you're the first hearing about that. That was a highly requested item to get back in stock. And I have a couple other new items I need to get up on the website yet when I get some time, that I think you'll like. And got some other apparel that's been on order, but I don't think I'll see that till probably December, maybe end of November. It's so tough right now trying to get stuff in stock. Everything's months out, not just weeks like it normally is. So that's kind of what's going on. It's pretty exciting. I'm getting pumped up to get back in the woods actually hunting. So going to New York will be fun. And it's funny, I'm getting a lot of messages asking me where I'm going, and I'm sorry, but I'm not going to give that information out. But I'll be hunting big woods. I'll be hunting big woods, public land in New York. That's my plan. So anyways, anyone is out hunting, got a tag in your pocket, it's about to get real good. So cold front coming in through the Northeast here this weekend. I think it could be a real good time to hunt those scrapes. So anyways, enjoy this podcast here with Brett Joy and John Lewis. All right, we're live from the truck bed. Brett's truck, I guess. John and Brett, welcome to the show. Brett, you've been on here before. Yep. And but John, this is your first time.
Yeah, it's my maiden voyage.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was good to get to run into you guys here, and you got a hold of me, said you were coming back to hunt Pennsylvania this year, and you were coming up in the middle of the summer to scout, so I knew you were serious.
Yeah, I was like all summer, like, am I going to go up there? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? And I want to hunt here and kill a good buck in PA on public land in the big woods, and I was like, if I'm going to do that, I'm probably going to have to put some time in and actually plan and get something done. So,
yeah.
You just got a little taste of it last fall.
Yeah. We were here for last October for the Public Land Challenge and had fun, liked the country. It's pretty similar to where I hunt at home. As far as a lot of I'd say if you replace red oak with the cherries with red oak, it would be really similar. That's about the biggest difference, I would say.
Yeah.
Other than the soil, you guys have is it pretty clay-based soil? Yeah, you have like a clay soil, and we have like a loamy, rocky stuff, sandy, junky soil that doesn't grow much.
Doesn't grow much.
Yeah, but other than that, it's pretty similar. Elevations are similar. Like I said, the vegetation's similar. The regrowth's pretty similar. But yeah, so I liked coming out here and seeing that it was similar. I'm like, oh, I probably can figure this out.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's not going to be exactly the same, but similar enough.
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised at the size of the woods around here. It's pretty big woods and some fairly mountainous stuff. So
yeah, it all depends. It's like a lot of plateau type areas where it could be flat for miles.
Yeah.
And I better not say too much detail there. We'll start giving things away. But before we go a little more into it, John, do you want to give a little background on yourself here?
Yeah, so I'm from I'm from southeastern Pennsylvania, but I live just a couple hours east in New York, and grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania, worked out in Iowa for Midwest Whitetail with Zach and Aaron and Greg, all the guys from the hunting public now. I worked out there from 2013 until 2015, and then my wife and I moved back to western New York area and been residing there ever since, and missing a bunch of deer and chasing ducks and geese. Really is kind of my upbringing, was waterfowl. I did a lot of deer hunting, but waterfowl was kind of my bread and butter for the last 7 or 8 years, and now I'm getting more into deer hunting than I was before, just with time and everything, and with what we're doing on the channel now. So
yeah, the Just Hunt Club YouTube channel, you guys have been putting out a variety of content, like you said, all through the Northeast and other places. Yep. But that's why I resonate so much with your guys' channel, because of the Northeastern stuff. Like, that's obviously home to me too, and it's awesome to see people putting out content, one at the level that you're doing and at the frequency, which definitely comes with a lot of work.
Yeah, you don't see many guys really at all in the Northeast putting out. Well, you do, but maybe not so heavy on the.
There's nobody.
Not so heavy on the YouTube side, but we've been trying to stay consistent and give the guys in the Northeast something they can relate to.
It's such a cool area. I mean, there's so many opportunities, and when people think of the Northeast, they think of big cities and, the East Coast and a lot of people, which there is, but there's a lot of wildlife out there, and there's a lot of really cool opportunities that you can chase only on the East Coast or the West Coast. So it's
and it's not easy compared to the rest of the country. So
which makes it hard for putting out YouTube videos.
It's hard, but
people
trying to do it.
People killing shit, and it's like, all right, it's not that easy.
Yeah. Here's Brett sniffling in a stand for 12 days straight, seeing one deer.
Exactly.
I love that. It's like I'll even question myself and be sitting in the tree for days, months on end for the most part. And it's
Yeah.
like, man, every time I think I'm doing all right and think I got something figured out, it still takes me forever.
Right. It's not even the same thing. I always get home from like a trip wherever, and like I'm like all jazzed. I'm like, okay, kill the buck and wherever, this place, this state, and get back. And I'm like, oh great, it's like October 5th or whatever. And I'm like, I'm gonna get out there and check my cameras or something, or go sit and hunt in New Hampshire. And it's like, I get out here, I'm like, this is just hard. Like, this isn't even the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, this is not even, for a day or two, I'm kind of like, feel bad for yourself. But then realize that that's why it's so rewarding when it does happen, is because it is that hard. And, if you can be successful in this part of the country, you're really doing something. So,
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. It was cool because, so Brett, I had you on the podcast. I was trying to remember if it was I think it might have been last October. And then I ran.
that sounds about right.
Yeah, I think then we met up, here for the Public Land Challenge. And that's where I met Jon at and everything. And you guys, that was your first time. Well, you've been in Pennsylvania. You grew up in Pennsylvania, but your first time hunting in PA. I want to just hear kind of what your thought processes was coming into a new area. You're used to hunting big woods, but different states, so there is some variety there.
So I think one of the I already touched on it, but the biggest difference, I think, from a lot of the areas I hunt in New Hampshire, not all of them, but a lot of them have pretty significant stands of red oak. We kind of lose those as we get north and get higher in elevation, but a fair amount do. I think that not having oak here, or many oaks in this particular area, I know there's some oaks on public land in Pennsylvania, but this area does more favors cherry. That was one of the bigger things, is to recognize that difference and realize that there's not going to be a mass crop to focus on, and that are going to, focus deer and deer activity. So without a mass crop, I always look for early succession growth and browse. And so that usually comes in the way of clear cuts or selective cuts, logging operations. So my biggest thing was that's what I wanted to look for. I selected an area with a lot of it, hundreds and hundreds of acres of early succession growth and actually various stages of succession in good edge habitat, and an area you can get off the road a good ways.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I looked at. We kind of had a starting spot anyway that we had to be within, relatively close to. So we could have driven, an hour in every direction. But in this general area, this just looked like a good spot. Having those different habitat types, being able to get off the road. And so that was what I focused on when I got here. Everything looked fairly, similar to home, so I felt pretty comfortable right off the bat. One of the things that I noticed, another big difference was, it really seems like the deer around here are absolutely relating to these cuts more than anything else. And I know I said that's what I was looking for. You'd think that's what you expect, but our deer at home will relate to the cuts to an extent, but it seems like they spend a lot of time in, mature timber and away from the cuts as well. And they don't bed in the cuts. They'll feed in the cuts, go around the cuts. But it seems like the deer on here are just living in these cuts or on the edges of them, which was interesting. So we walked, 10 miles that first day we scouted. Yeah. And we walked across some really good topography features where I figured there'd be some sign, and it was like vacant and deer sign. And I think it's just because we weren't close enough to those cuts. So that was interesting. So that just solidified the fact that we need to be right in the middle of these cuts, next to them, on the edges of them, sometimes in them. So I think that was the biggest difference, is the deer out here without a mass crop. They're not going to be in the up high, in mature timber if there's no mass crop. I mean, to an extent they will be, but the highest concentration of them is going to be near those cuts. So that was interesting. So that plays a really big role. But I think that actually makes it easier for a person coming to hunt or trying to find a new area, because cuts are really easy to identify on an aerial photo, whereas oaks can be easy, but sometimes they're not so easy. And oaks are depending upon what area of the country you're in, they can be fickle. Some years they produce, sometimes they won't, and so that can that will dictate whether one area is good one year or the other. If you have a clear cut that's been cut 2 years ago, it's going to be good for 8 years straight. the movement and the behavior and how the deer relate to it's going to be fairly similar for an extended period of time. It's going to be consistent. You can almost bank on that being the same year after year after year. Whereas if you have oaks that aren't producing, like a whole hillside or mountainside of oaks that isn't producing where it did the year before, you may see drastically different deer behavior in that area, and they just may not be there. So I actually prefer this type of area. I know that the cherries do have a bit, but it doesn't seem like it's a thing you can bank on. It's a short period.
Most of the time, the cherries seem to drop and be off the trees and scooped up by the end of September. Maybe you might get in the beginning of October a little bit, but it's not easy to rely on. But what you just said there is exactly like what I've found is like most of the areas I hunt don't have oaks, and some areas I do. But when I first started hunting an area that had like mostly oaks, I was like lost at first because the sign I'd found in the spring when it didn't have acorns on the top, like I'm like, there's no deer anywhere. Like I left cameras up and nothing. But when you find these areas that don't have that mass crop and you have, say, cuts or whatever else, they seem to year after year do similar things. Bucks might die, but other ones move in, or you can find scrapes that are 20, 25 years old that are just being,
for sure.
worked.
Yep.
But and then so when you guys were in here, scouting, because you only were here for what, 3 days?
Yeah, 3 days.
Yeah. And you didn't sit in a tree a whole lot, did you?
I think we sat 3 times, a morning and 2 evenings.
Yeah.
Morning and 2 evenings, yeah. And then Zach shot his buck, and so we kind of missed 2 sits helping him track, which was fun. I mean, it wasn't, honestly, and like going into a place like this and hunting for 3 days and one of it scouting, the expectation to kill a buck is not high. Like, you don't think. It's just more to get out there, see it, learn a little bit, and, maybe
it gave us
something.
a good head start for right
100%. Oh, yeah, 100%.
Like, we could come, it allowed us to come today and bang out a bunch of work.
For sure. And one of the, I actually think we maybe came at one of the best times to scout, because we were here, I think, October, like, 20s, the early 20s, maybe.
Yeah.
And there was so much sign laid down, because that's a period where they're laying down a bunch of sign, rub scrapes, and we saw it all. So we could really like hone in on that sign, that fresh sign, and everything was super evident, because, I mean, we're looking at scrapes that were made the night before rather than trying to look at something, that's weeks old or months old or 6 months old.
Yeah.
So I think probably, that late October time frame, mid to late October, early November, and then, the spring after snow's off are probably the 2 best times to look for that buck sign. So we're here during a really good time, and we learned a lot. We found a bunch of sign, and, gave us a huge head start. Today, which we came back and hung cameras in essentially the same spots. We didn't really get to any new ones. We were hoping to, but we kind of weren't really efficient with our time today and didn't get as much done as we hoped.
That always happens.
But it always happens.
And it's funny so Brett told me about one specific spot, and he's like, I don't know if I'm going to get back here to hunt it, but like you need to hunt this or check it out at least. And so anyways, I never got around to it, but I was telling my dad about it, and he's like, well, and he hunts an area somewhat close to where you were at, and he's like, well, I'll go check it out for you or whatever. And he dropped a camera hoping to help you guys when you're coming back to scout or to hunt in the fall. Well, the camera never worked. It never took any photos.
Didn't take any pictures. We're all fired up.
We were pretty pumped.
The camera's going to be there. And we're like, oh, there it is. Oh, it looks good. I bet. And
it was
like,
on.
Yeah. Oh, and it was on, and I turned it on. The batteries it was working, and I'm like, hey, it says no pictures. But sometimes the readouts will say no pictures. We pop the card and there is pictures, but there's no pictures on the card.
We tested it afterwards too to see. And
we did. We tried to see if
anything.
I wasn't taking any pictures. So. But that's all right. I mean, we know. I mean, from the sign we saw in the habitat, we know there's good deer out there.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't, and we have a camera there now that probably is probably working.
Yeah.
So we should have a good idea of what's in the area.
And one of the other things I know you and I have talked about, like, it was the difference between where you're at and here is like when I was talking to you about hunting bottoms and stuff, and that's not something you typically do. And
no, our bottoms are a lot different. You have these. So our bottoms are super rocky, and they're like small, like really skinny.
Okay.
So
more like gullies. Almost.
Yeah, we just have like they're like there's no actual bottom, if you will.
Yeah,
it's
just go
it's
straight
hill,
up.
hill, creek in the bottom. And so like the deer aren't running that because they're on like a steep side hill.
Yeah.
Super rocky. They're probably up from that. They cross them.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But you down in this area, there's actual like bottoms. They may be 100 yards wide, 200 yards wide, that type of thing. And it seems like the bottoms have really good habitat and browse.
Yeah, they do.
And so we focused half our time today and last October in those bottoms, and man, did we find a ton of sign. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I think the wind thing's going to be interesting hunting down there, but they're a little bigger, so it may be a little more consistent and less swirling than some of these really like narrow bottoms. But yeah, we really don't have them. We have like, it's not creek bottoms. It's like a big flat bottom area, like a swampy bottom at the base of a mountain that may be 200 acres of flat.
Yeah.
So like, or bigger than that, like even. So that we'll hunt those. And the wind usually is consistent on those because it's big enough and long enough that you can get a consistent wind. And there's pretty good deer and pretty good activity in those bottoms at home. I would say that in the mountain areas that we hunt, the bucks tend to be up high, though, until probably the second week in November, and then they really are in the bottoms. But that doesn't mean that there isn't bucks in the bottoms earlier in the year. There definitely is, but
just being able to actually hunt them and kill them is a different story.
Yeah, it's tougher in those. If they're in the rut, we have good luck.
Yeah,
hunting like big swampy bottoms for sure. But earlier in the season, they can be kind of tough. It seems like you can't. I don't know. They're just tough for a multitude of reasons, I think. But they can be really good, especially with their gun. When you can see over like swamp, that's a huge advantage.
Like where Ross
where Ross killed his buck Curly.
Good.
That's
a New Hampshire bottom.
Yeah, that's a pretty typical spot right there. But yeah,
you guys had it on video, didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I was just saying, I remember watching that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah,
that bottom is on fire. Like that's just such a great spot. That there's a cut down that bottom, and then there's selective cut. There's like actual swamp with like water and like a channel and like a creek running through it. Then you have some like swale grass, some cattails. It's like a super diverse bottom, lots of food, lots of habitat, lots of cover, and like there's a ton of does that live down there year round, and the bucks will come off the mountains and go down into there looking for does, and they'll continually cycle through that bottom, and we have like a couple stands and spots where they seem to always come through there when they're going through the bottom. So, and that's one of the spot that Ross killed that buck Curly a couple of years back. Really nice 6.5-year-old mountain buck.
Yeah.
So yeah, the bottoms they're interesting. They're definitely different. I'm still, and I guess my question for you is like, do you see a lot of activity like daylight before the rut in those bottoms, or not really?
Okay. I don't really hunt them early in the bottoms just because the wind is harder when it's warmer. Once it gets colder, you get more consistent down thermal, especially close to the creeks. Or you have just. It's so cold that your thermals go straight up and from coming off of you and the water and everything. So like I typically don't hunt them early unless I get like an apple orchard or something that's in the bottom. Early on, I'll try it, but it's iffy with the wind. So I don't typically. And my cameras are mostly. I'd say probably around October 18th or so, they start turning up, maybe even a little bit earlier. But that's mostly nighttime. And then as you start getting that last week, October, that's when the daylight activity bottoms, some seekers start out looking and cruising those bottoms. My favorite time to hunt. So to hunt community scrapes in the bottoms is that last week of October, 100%.
Kind of what we're banking on. And we got a couple of really good, potential setups that we hang cameras today on big scrapes, and that's kind of what we're hoping to do this year is come back that last week in October. That last week in October in New Hampshire, it can be good, but it's not like great. I think that we probably get the activity you guys do the last week in October, the first week in November. So imagine what the third week in October is here. Can be good, but not. It's kind of like hit or miss.
Infrequent.
It's kind of how we are at home. So it's like that's nice because we can come here in a ideal time and hunt scrapes.
Not burn yourself out at home.
Yeah, and then still get back to hunt the best part of the season at home. So that was kind of like the game plan. Might not work. I don't know. We don't have a ton of time, but we're gonna try it. So.
Yep. The other time for bottoms is like if you get like beaver pond, pinch point type stuff. That's like second week in November for me. Like, well, like probably from like the 7th or even to about the 14th, but 7th to 11th is like that time frame in those spots. You're not going to see many deer, but when they come cruising through, there's a good chance of you seeing a good one in that.
And we got a camera in one of those exact spot you described too. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's. I would hope that it shows true to you.
I think we'll probably hunt late October and then leave the cameras for the year and see what happens after we leave.
Yeah, and then they're gonna leave them here for me, and I'm gonna scoop them all up. And
you'll have to go out there in your snowshoes and check them all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's something to key in on too. Is like if you are looking to do something like this, it's not a right out of the gate thing. Like it can take a couple years to really get it figured out, keep coming back, and pick away at it.
Especially big woods on public.
Right.
There's no quick
so
success
intimidating.
to big woods.
Right.
There can be some luck, but not actual.
Yeah.
No, and that's why I kicked myself in the butt this summer, and I was like, all right, I'm going out. I got to start this process because I want to do it. And if you keep waiting, the best time to start learning the big woods or hunting them was last year. That's really like what it's like. And we kind of did last year, so that's good. But I was like, I got to get some cameras out. Got to start to learn how these deer move in this particular area because we can talk in generalizations about how the deer move in the big woods in particular areas, but until you go to it, it's really site specific. I think. Yeah. It varies so much, and so I could talk to you, and you may have hunted 3 miles down the road, 10 miles down the road, 20 miles down the road, but it may be different. Yep. Exactly where we are. So we need to learn this spot and how the deer are moving here. And we're not going to do that if we're not either spending a bunch of time in the woods, which we don't have to spend, or run cameras. So that's what we opted to do. And that seems to work for me in these type of settings is getting cameras and let them, do the work for us and learn from them. And we might not even be on a deer this year, but maybe we leave the cameras and figure out that this one spot blows up first week in November. We have 4 different mature bucks, and it's like, okay, maybe in 2022 we'll come back and hunt that week. That seems to be how the success comes a lot of the times.
And you can learn so much by leaving those cameras there, and it actually probably helps that you're not here to move them or do anything because like the spots I just leave them, it could be dead for an entire month, and then all of a sudden for 3 days it's wild, and you're like, all right, that's giving me some intel.
We see that
what I need to do
so much. Like we won't get a deer in a camera for like September and October, and then even maybe the first week of November. Then all of a sudden it's like a light switch, and it's like 4 mature bucks walk down that trail in 1 week, and 2 of them are in daylight. Like, what the heck? And if you didn't have that camera, you'd never know. And that's how we learned and found a lot of the good spots that we have in New England is just leaving those cameras up and running a lot of them. The number one thing I spend money on and spend time doing other than like sitting in a tree is running cameras for sure.
Yeah. That's when you have to, everyone has a time crunch of some sort. You can't spend all the time in the woods scouting, and cameras just teach you so much. And like what you guys are doing here, even though I'm from Pennsylvania, I have spots that I look at it all from a 3-year strategy. That's normally how long it would take me to kind of slightly figure out an area. Like I had some spots I scouted in the spring. I dropped 4 or 5 cameras, and I won't go back to it this entire year till probably next shed season. Some of them might be dead. Maybe something happened, a bear ripped it off a tree, whatever. But that's how I'm going to learn as far as moving forward. And all right, now I notice, this elevation type line, what was going on? Was there acorns there? Was there, whatever it might be. And then you can kind of start adjusting and fine tuning that plan.
It seems like if you can leave your cameras from October 15th to the end of November, that's going to be the time you're going to learn the most. And probably, I think, in these types of big woods areas, you're going to learn the most and get the most out of it. And maybe learn something that you can capitalize on the following year. Yeah. Early season can be so fickle. The deer could be doing one thing one year, and then in September or early October and next year he's a mile away. He's still in the area, but he's on some other, maybe he's on cherries and they dropped a little later one year, and then the next year he's on whatever browse. It's, so that early season stuff seems to change every single year. That's why, like, when I have stands that I hang for like late October and November, and I'll hang them in January, whenever I can get out there, because I know based on annual data that they're going to continually be good. So it doesn't matter when I hang them. Like, I know now where I'm going to be sitting in November in New Hampshire, and I also knew last December where I was going to be sitting this November, and nothing's going to change. Like, I'm going to sit there. So, and it's all based on historical trail camera data on a particular bucket.
And that's where things differ from like other pieces of like or farm country, other stuff where like, the whole run and gun style. I mean, I hunt. I don't really have any fixed stands anymore, but the same thing is, it doesn't mean I'm not hunting the same trees.
Right.
Like, I have spots that are picked, especially during the rut type time frame.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of that stuff is annually, perennial. It's just that data helps out so much for that. And I've got caught and getting caught and seeing everybody moving around and social media and saying, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then I'm like, why didn't I just stay true to sitting in this same spot sometimes, or same couple of spots and bouncing around and earlier in the season that can change.
I don't hang stands for early season until
food sources
I'm about to hunt them.
So much. Yeah. They can change daily, really, but it's I totally agree.
And the other thing is, sitting in the same spot is not for everybody too. That doesn't mean that. I mean, your dad kills bucks walking logging roads and grunting, right? So he's not sitting. I mean, maybe he does at some point in the season, but there's different ways to do it. It just seems like if you want to have like an approach and a process that's going to work and you can plan to do it, that may be the way to be the most successful and set yourself up for success. But that doesn't mean you have to do it that way. I mean, a lot of guys can't sit in a tree for days on end.
Zach Farrenbaugh,
sure, exactly. Zach doesn't. He has no desire to do it, and so he shouldn't.
Yeah,
and he found other ways to be successful that suits his personality, which is awesome. But that's the way that I've found success is learning about these spots, learning about even particular deer more, I guess, precisely, and then hopefully they make it to the next year, and then you have a couple of years of information on them, and then they may die or they may move, but a lot of the times they're going to be right there again doing the same type of thing, and you can bank on it. And it helps when there's like two or three good bucks doing a similar thing, so you kind of double your chances.
Yeah.
Because it's tough to hunt one buck in the big woods. If you have like two or three doing the same thing, you're like, okay, I got a couple head shooting here, and that helps.
Yeah.
But not every area has more than one, so.
Yeah, I like the odds in my favor if possible with more of them. Try and chase one specific deer is really,
it's hard.
Really
it's super hard. It kind of gets crazy. You get a tunnel vision, obsessed with it. And then,
I know.
The thing you have to learn is like, half of those deer to 75% of them that you're after, like they're going to die or someone's going to shoot them or they're going to disappear. So you have to be able to say, oh, well, that was fun. On to the next one, like immediately, or else you're just going to waste your season like feeling down on yourself because some guy shot your buck, but it's not really your buck. It's a wild animal, so you have to learn that. But that's how it goes.
That is so tough. And like the sitting, John, how are you with sitting like for long periods of time in the same spot?
I can do it, but last year I hunted out of a saddle all year. I don't think I hunted the same spot twice. I had a really good spot. It was good last year too that I hunted 2 years ago, and I had a fixed stand there.
That was on New York in public.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, in New York on public.
Yep. Yeah, it was just a big funnel through just on a big ridge. I kind of nicknamed that spot as my missing trees. Because I missed $3 out of that tree that year.
One of them's still around.
But yeah, one of them's still around, and But I can sit for a while. I don't have a problem doing it. Usually, what drives me out of a tree is getting work done and editing.
Yeah,
is what it is. But ever since I started hunting out of the saddle, it made me go to a lot more places, because if I was self-filming or if I didn't have somebody with me, I'm like, I talk to myself out of trying new stuff way more, because I'm like, I got to lug a stand in with a tree arm and a 10-pound camera and sticks and like climb up 600 feet of elevation. So, but
a lot of the stuff you were doing or have been doing is like learning new areas,
Right.
Kind of like skunting, as you call it,
I call it
actually.
skunning.
Scout hunting.
I like that.
And that's a great approach if that's what you're doing your first or second year. You're trying to learn an area.
Yeah.
Hunt around, keep moving, see new country. If you see some signs set up on it.
Last year was really only the second year that I seriously hunted that area. Like I deer hunted, but like I said, I was doing a lot of waterfowl, producing shows for waterfowl. So with that and deer, the seasons interlap so much, so it's hard to be really good at both.
And I talk about sitting in the same tree for a week straight and knowing all, but if I didn't have that confidence and have a spot that I believed in and have that information, I would not sit.
Yeah.
A good example of that is last year, Ross killed a buck in New Hampshire who is part of Just Hunt Club, and we do most of our hunting together in New Hampshire and all over. But and I was kind of up to hunt, if you will, because Ross had filled his tag in New Hampshire, his gun tag. And there was a pretty good buck that I was really interested in trying to kill. And I didn't know that much about him because he had just shown up that year, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before. And I sat like twice for him, and then I just like ran cameras, like scouted. We did a lot of like still hunting.
A lot of skunting.
Like, because I didn't feel confident. I didn't want to, I don't like wasting my time. And and I guess if you're in the woods, maybe you're never wasting your time, but like, I don't like sitting in a place unless 100%, not 100%, but I'm really confident that this buck is probably going to walk by here at some point, or one of these bucks. And I didn't feel that way. So last year I didn't do that. I kind of just scouted around, sat here and there and ran some cameras, learn more about that buck. So, and now we have a couple spots where I think I'd feel pretty confident sitting this year on them. Whereas last year I just didn't because, we just didn't know that much about them. So if you're trying to learn a spot and you don't have that intel, maybe sitting in the same tree is not smart. I mean, you might be wasting your time. You might be in the wrong spot and you just don't know it. So I would say move around, run cameras, scout until you find that right spot and you feel confident. And then when you find it, ride it.
That's a really good point, because you can't just go out and or find the first sign you see and sit on it for 7 days and expect like to be able to have success in it and everything. And like I was getting mad at myself last year because it was a brand new area, and you knew the one buck I was chasing, and I was bouncing around quite a bit, and I'm like, I'd sit in a spot and then I'd move, and then he'd come by there, and I'm like, why didn't I stay? But I didn't have that confidence because I didn't know at the time.
100%.
Now I know some of that stuff, and it makes it easier because your confidence is everything when it comes to especially
mental.
Sitting.
It's a mental game.
It is.
When I was younger, I just didn't have quite the grasp I do now on this type of stuff. And I couldn't sit all day, and I couldn't even sit for more than 2 hours. I remember it would kill me to sit till 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't confident. I didn't believe in my spot. I didn't know. I was like, I got to go look. I got to go find and, scout. And I could never sit. I remember probably 2010 was maybe the first time I sat all day, and I was like so proud of myself. I sat in a tree all day. I was like, I can't believe I just did that. Now I can literally sit for a week straight, dark to dark, in the same tree, and I don't ever want to climb out. I'm like good all day. I'm never like I'm like every day I sit here is a day closer to that buck walking by because I feel confident he's going to walk by. But if you don't have that confidence, then don't sit. Don't sit all day in the same tree.
And how you learn is by the scouting portion of it. So like, especially if you're still learning or trying to new to the big woods or just new to an area. Yeah.
I would say it would be really tough for me with my style to come to a place and kill a buck on my first year. Probably not going to happen with my style. Like it's just not realistically. Like I like to plan and learn, and I play the long game. That's how I do it, and I enjoy it that way. It's more of a story. It's more of a development, a process, a journey. I enjoy that part of it. Like walking in and killing a deer, everybody gets lucky, and if every once in a while, and if I were to get lucky, like that's great, but like that's not going to mean as much to me, and I'm not going to learn. If you are a type of guy that can go into an area like this and kill on your first year, and like that's awesome. But you're probably doing it differently than me, which is fine. I'd say the only way you can do that consistently, well, I shouldn't say that. The only way that I can see myself doing consistently is probably tracking. I always say that tracking is a way that you can get into the biggest deer in an area in a day or two if you have tracking snow on the ground. That's your golden ticket to success on like a first time or first year.
Tracking is so
excuse me.
Tracking is so cool too, because you just you talk about trail cameras and everything, but you learn so much about deer just by tracking. I tracked a buck in New York last year, and I tracked him for 6 miles. And I mean, it was like perfect conditions. It snowed through the night and quit like right at first light. So like everything we had was, an hour or two old. So I tracked that buck for 6 miles and literally followed everywhere that he went all in daylight.
Everything he did.
He walked under 4 tree stands. 4 different people's
Really?
stands. Yeah. And it was just all daylight. I tracked him for 6 miles, and now like probably one of my best spots going into this year is from what I learned tracking that deer. Just where he ran into, where there was groups of does that he would go bump around and then move off and go to it. So I found a bunch of different like doe groups throughout that 6 mile track that he, went to, and that is something that I put in my back pocket for, later in the rut when those deer are really around me. It's like, it seems like November, right before rifle season, like November 11th through the 16th, they just go whoosh, and just go everywhere. That's when I always get a bunch of pictures of big deer, just that just show up out of nowhere. And that's usually what they're doing, is we have like those little doe groups, and they're just leaving their core area where they and just cooking to find other stuff. So,
and I found tracking, and so it's helpful when you're tracking a buck to try to figure out what he's doing and what kind of mood he's in and how he's behaving. If it's a buck that's just feeding or like going to bed or moseying around, he's going to do one thing. If he's looking for does and on the move, he's doing something else. And you can probably figure that out pretty quickly, what he's doing if you follow him for a couple hours or a few miles. But those bucks that are traveling looking for does, you can learn so much about those, where they're looking, how they're using the terrain. Because when a buck is like feeding and like moving across his habitat, his landscape, he travels totally different than when he's looking for does. Yeah. It's a totally different, he takes different trails, different routes, all that stuff. And I think that those trails they're taking in between doe groups are like highways, as I call them. And we'll put cameras on these highways and get, like I had said, no pictures until November 7th or 10th or 15th. And all of a sudden it's like, boom. And now those deer they're on the move. They're taking those highways. And that's when we'll sit those spots. But you learn, a lot of times you can learn about those from tracking a buck in November, and you learn some spots that are unbelievable that you never even think of. And we've identified a few of them that are like perennial producers based on tracking a buck. And then if, you track one buck and then the next year or 3 weeks later, you track a different buck and he goes to the same spot. And you're like, oh, okay. All
right.
This is that the first one was not an accident. And you kind of realize why they're doing it, and it all clicks. And then monitor that spot with a camera, and then that's like reveals everything. And now you have one of those spots I'm talking about. So that's a great way to get into it.
A lot of those spots that you're saying highways, though, without, and correct me if I'm wrong, but without snow, it may not look like a spot. No. It's not a highway trail. Yeah. You're calling it highway.
Yep,
for
100%. No, but it's a highway.
It's something that you wouldn't be like, there's a lot of deer that are running through here.
Yeah, right. And when I say highway, I don't mean that like every deer in the woods is running that trail year round. I mean that when bucks, probably particularly mature bucks, are going, I call it zombie mode. That's the way I say it. They're just like literally like freaking zombies. They're just like, tongue out, mouth open, like 65 degrees, it's noon, and they're just like, just like going down the trail, like going to that next doe group. When they're in that type of mode and exhibiting that type of behavior, they will take these trails and these paths of least resistance, paths that give them wind advantage where they can wind check doe groups, or, the quickest way. They just want to keep hitting. Okay, is she in here? Okay. All right, there's another doe group half mile up the ridge. Go check her. Okay, there's two in the bottom a mile away. Got to go north. Like, they'll just keep going on these circuits, keep checking these does, and that's what we see. And you can find those tracking really effectively. You can find them in a couple hours, or it might take you 5 years to find them without snow. So that's a great way to learn, is tracking a buck. Even if, like, even if I would even say, we have all our gun seasons are in November for the most part in the Northeast. Well, I shouldn't say in New England.
Yeah.
Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont's a little later, but it's still pretty early. I'll say northern New Hampshire. How about that? And where most of tracking is done. Pretty much if we have snow, we have a gun and we can track and kill a deer. But I would say even like in a situation like out here, if it's still bow season and you don't know what's going on, get on a track like mid-November and learn something from them.
Last couple of years we've had snow in that 14th, 15th, 16th, last few days of the season in November. And what I've found with those dates around here is it's mostly dead except for the biggest of the big are moving at that time frame. Like my cameras don't have much activity, but the big ones are zombieing at that point. That's just in this specific area. But
that makes a lot of sense.
And like the tracking thing, like my grandpa had done that a lot, and I hadn't done it a whole lot up to this point. But one thing's hanging out with Johnny Stewart was taught me late season in January. I was doing it. So you're not learning as much about the doe groups and stuff like you guys are talking about, but you're learning how they are still moving through an area and understanding, that type of stuff. And it's a super interesting concept.
Flintlock?
Flintlock,
yeah. That seems really cool.
Yeah. And the one thing that I learned about tracking is I think as hunters we tend to get such tunnel vision and think these bucks are living in this 100-acre area and that's like their core area and all that stuff. And when you track and you realize he blew through that 100 acres in like 4 minutes, and you're like, oh, maybe he spends like 7% of his time here. And I need to look way bigger picture. And that's a thing that you don't realize. You're like, oh yeah, I think he's living up high. He's been up high the last couple months, and you realize he went from high to low in 5 minutes and covered a mile, and you're like, oh, maybe he just doesn't stay up high. Maybe he goes high, low, all over the place.
Yeah.
So that's what tracking has really helped me to do is look big picture and realize that I'm going to have to track deer 5 to 10 miles.
Oh, and it's
in a day.
So...
during daylight, that buck.
What was that one that
miles.
We tracked in Mass?
No, man, we tracked
that thing
him a lot
was
ways.
ridiculous.
Yeah. And it happens all the time. You just don't.
But we
realize.
learned a piece of property that how big was the chunk?
Oh, I think this is at least 2,000 to 3,000 acres. Maybe
and we
bigger.
learned a lot of really good stuff that we can go back in there and hang cameras and probably.
And
have
those
pretty
bucks
good
will
chances.
bring you to those big scrapes, those big signpost rubs, like the big fun. They'll bring you right through them and show them to you. It's just it's like, hey, I'll take you on a tour of what I do in this area. What better way to learn about a buck in the area than just follow him and watch what he does the whole day? It's perfect. So if you can do that, that's a really great way.
It's a cool feeling too, because I know, when going back to the sitting thing, you're sitting there all day anticipating, what you think that deer is doing and hoping he comes by you. And then tracking, for me anyway, it's I know I am pursuing this animal and I know he's right there. He's right in front of me and I'm actively I can get on him any minute now, any minute. And it just kind of gives you that drive to keep going. And then you look at your track and you're like, holy crap, we walked, 7.5 miles and climbed,
That's
3,000
the interesting
feet of
thing
elevation.
about tracking is you don't realize, you think you've been tracking for an hour and you look down, and you're like, oh, it's been 3 hours.
Yeah.
Holy smoke, you just get lost in it and you get so focused. It's really enjoyable. I'll tell one more story just about how you can learn that I just kind of thought of. I was hunting a buck in New Hampshire in 2012, and I was on this buck from Velvet right into November, and he was just after dark. I had pictures of him. I didn't really have much daylight. I knew he was living in a really big swamp for the most part. And then coming out of that swamp and heading high, kind of in reverse of what they usually do around here. But a lot of the food was up on the ridges. There was some apples and oaks. So he'd bed down low in the swamp. It's thick, good bedding, and then leave the swamp and head up high in the evening. And I was getting his pictures there and trying to figure out where he was in this giant bottom. That's really difficult. It was first week in November. I went in there to check a camera. I actually just got back from hunting Ohio, and we got 2 inches of snow. And I ran in there mid-morning to check a camera, and the camera that I always got his picture on coming out of the swamp, there was a big set of tracks walking right by in the snow. And I was like, I wonder if that's him. Check the camera. Sure enough, it's him going back in the morning to bed, or going back, at least in the swamp. So I tracked him. I didn't really want to kill him tracking him that day, because I was just trying to like figure out his thing, and I didn't want to kill him that way. But I did. I tracked him for maybe, I don't know, half a mile, and I found this one pinch point he went through in the swamp between, it was like standing water and then like a stream. Actually, a beaver dam is right on the backside of it, more or less. Mm-hmm. And I was like, when I tracked him through it, the light bulb went off. And I was like, this is where I can kill this buck, like in this little pinch point within the bottom he lives in. And I backed out, and I killed him like a week later coming through that pinch point.
Really?
Yeah. 150-inch like tank of an 8-pointer. Like just one of the best, one of the prettiest, biggest New Hampshire deer you'll see. And, that if I hadn't have tracked him that day and learned that, I don't think I'd kill that deer. And I was on him the whole year, getting his picture, hunting him. But that little piece of information, that was it.
That was all you needed.
And that's all I learned. And it was like the light bulb went off. I was like, oh, of course, that makes sense. And boom, it worked. So I think I sat it. It might have been the first time I sat it, first or second time too. I think I hunted it maybe like 2 days in a row. It was the second day. So that definitely works. And when you're tracking them, you could also kill them right then too, which is great. So I enjoy that a lot. Learning. I like tracking of shot bucks tracking for sure, and some big bucks, but I more enjoy following them and learning about their behavior and what they're doing. It's really talented.
Doesn't that gets me just as excited as anything, is like all of a sudden pieces of the puzzle start coming together, and when you're doing that type of stuff, and you're like, and then you're visualizing in your head what could happen if you sat here and you're looking at the tree, and it's so cool.
I think probably some of these trackers, and a lot of them don't sit at all. But I think if they thought about it, they probably have some of the most killer places to sit during the rut if they could just sit still. But a lot of guys don't want to, and that's fine. That's not their style. But man, you're probably like, hey, you got a spot where every time you track a buck in this piece of woods he walks by, and they'll probably tell you like 2 or 3 spots. Yeah, right there on the backside of the swamp or the cut, or maybe he runs off the ridge there or whatever. So yeah, that's a really good way, and it's really fun. And it's unique. It's something different, especially if you've been sitting from September, October, most of November. You get some snow. It's like, all right, let's stretch these legs and take the gun for a walk.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. That is so much fun. And I think like last year I really got into gun hunting became fun again to me because I let it be fun. Like I always look at gun hunting as like a negative thing, and not from the standpoint of what weapon it is, just because there's a lot more pressure during that time frame. It's after the rut, and for us it's after the rut. Right. But I've learned so much the last couple of years by spending time with the rifle and walking around and tracking and just reading sign that way, and finding these hidey holes that they like to go in and how they move through. There might be a whole set of woods, and they'll just move to this one spot of cover that goes through instead of walking down the trail where all the main trail is, Just learning that type of stuff is super helpful.
Yeah, I used to be like bow only, like in my head, and then like I don't know, I just don't care anymore. Like,
I'm an any weapon kind of guy.
I am now. I never used to be, but I'm more about the deer than what weapon I have. I don't really care. I mean, if I'm being 100% honest, I'd probably rather shoot a buck at 15 yards with my bow if I could choose. But if I shoot him at 60 with my rifle, I don't care. Like I don't, whatever. I just like learning about the animals and hunting those animals, and that's the part for me that is, does it for me, is learning about them.
The way you said that reminded me. I did a podcast with Robbie Denning. He's a mule deer killer out west, and just he's like, I hunt for the opportunity that I have for a specific deer that I'm going at.
Yes.
He's like, if that's with a muzzleloader, that's with the bow, or that's with a rifle, I don't care. He's like, I'm going for my best opportunities for what I have.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. I used to just be, like I said, I have to do it with the bow, and now I'm like, I don't care. Yeah. I just want to get on that deer and kill him and learn about him, and whatever. How it happens, it happens. I don't some deer I've killed with a bow. Early season, I've killed them with a bow during the rut. I've killed them with a rifle during the rut. I've killed them with a muzzleloader. I've killed them late season track. I don't care. They all mean the same. I learned about the animal, hunted that animal, and found a way to kill them. So I think that's what I like to do. I mean, if you just like the bow hunt, that's great too. Whatever. Yeah. I mean, that's different for everybody.
Yep, exactly right. Just got to be honest with yourself and do whatever makes you happy with it. So you guys think you're going to come up for a week, or come down, I guess, for
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to play it by ear. 2 of the cameras I hung are cell cameras. So, yeah, how many did we hang? 8 today?
Yes.
8, 9, something like that.
But I'm close enough that if things get heated up, I can rip
John's
out pretty fast.
Closer than
if Brett gives me the login for his cell cams.
Nope, they're dead.
Yeah.
Don't go sit there.
Yeah.
So
as you're in the truck already.
Right. Yeah.
I'm in the tree. No, it's just not worth it. I don't know what we'll do. It may not be a full week. It's unfortunate, but it seems like a lot of the places that I want to spend more time hunting don't have Sunday hunting.
Yeah.
And that really, I have a full-time job, so I do have a fairly flexible schedule where I can kind of make some things work, but man, not having those Sundays really kills me. And the other 2 states that I really want to spend a lot of time in are Maine and Massachusetts, and both of them also do not have Sunday hunting. Oh. So it's like, man, that's so tough. Like if you can only get out for a weekend, especially if you're traveling. Yeah. I mean, this is almost 8 or 9 hours from where I live. And so it's tough to do that for like a day. I'm probably not gonna, right? So at that point I have to take time off. And then I know I'm taking time off a couple weeks later for Hampshire rut, so it gets pretty tough. So we'll see. We'll play it by ear. Maybe a couple long weekends, and maybe a 4 or 5 day stretch. It's more to learn this year. Yeah, it's tough. So we'll see. John will probably get out a lot more often.
Yeah,
I would say.
We always say that, and then
I know it's so
slammed
busy
with everything else.
Yeah, but part of the issue is we just have so many things we want to do. There's not enough time to do them all.
I
right?
know. Hey, that's a good thing. If we didn't have any hobbies or passions, and you're trying to find things to do, I don't know. That's not for me. I like being too busy with it.
Yeah, no, I do too, for sure.
Well, cool. Thanks. I appreciate you guys taking some time out before you have a long, tiring. Well, it's not that long of a drive, but whole day of hiking here. So let's start out. John, where can people find you at, and if they want to check out your stuff?
Yeah, I'm not as active on my personal stuff as I am on just the Just Hunt Club channel. I mean, my personal Instagram is at jlewis92, I believe. And then, but for the mostly to stay up to date with what we're doing, it'll all be at Just Hunt Club for Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff coming this fall. I think we're gonna kick it off in South Dakota, Alberta.
Back to South
they let
Dakota
you across the border.
I think they
will. Yeah.
PA.
Yeah.
Probably some Mass, maybe some Maine. Definitely New Hampshire. Definitely New York.
Yeah.
And we got lots in waterfowl stuff if you're into that.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of have a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
We do waterfowl, whitetails, turkeys in the spring, but really pretty much throughout the fall, there's 2 or 3 different episodes going up on our YouTube channel every week. So.
Absolutely.
Cool. Brett, where can people find you?
Yeah, go to Just Hunt Club. That's the best place. I feel like I'm less and less active in my personal account. I'm just tired. I don't have time. I'm like, oh man. But if you want to, it's Brett Joy 22. But go to Just Hunt Club and follow it there. That's the best place. It's particularly the YouTube channel. If you guys can, if you're interested, please go in there, subscribe, and tell us what you think of our stuff. And hopefully you can relate to it and learn something. And you can see some sort of resemblance to your situation if you're a hunter in the Northeast, or maybe anywhere really. But that's kind of where we're focusing on. So.
I get more and more listeners from different parts of the country that don't have even any big woods or anything like that. They just love hearing about it because it's so different than people from Texas and Oklahoma and stuff. And it's cool to see that and hear that. And definitely everyone that's listening, when you go on their YouTube, click that subscribe button. That helps out. I mean, for them, that helps out. For me on the podcast and YouTube, like that's what really helps us out as we're creating stuff and putting it on.
Yeah, if you want to keep consuming this type of content, and we want to keep doing it, that's how it's gotta be. So it's just the way that it is.
Well, anyways, thanks for coming on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.